Surprise, surprise, I'm back. Or maybe I am. Maybe I'm not. I'm not really sure yet. This is a podcast. This episode is an episode about why I haven't been podcasting. So I'm not going to really talk a ton about pathology, but I've had so many people ask me, why did you stop podcasting? I love your podcast, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that because I think it is relevant and it is multifactorial, okay? But before I get started, I have to make a correction to the last podcast. And you're probably thinking, it's been 2 years. Why do you even care at this point? Well, I care because I like to be correct. I don't like to say things that are incorrect. And my last podcast I made, I got a message from somebody, I believe named Tara, and she said something about the ligamentum arteriosum not being attached to the spine. I think I said that the ligamentum arteriosum was attached to the spine, and as a result, it rips the aorta during a high energy car crash. And so that's incorrect. I just misspoke, basically. Let me explain. The ligamentum arteriosum, okay, when you are a little baby, you have a blood vessel that goes between the aorta and the pulmonary artery. And it's because, you're not breathing oxygen. You're in the amniotic sac, and you need a connection between those two. Once you are born and you start breathing oxygen, the ductus arteriosus is the name of that. Usually it will involute, which means it's an open tube, and then it becomes a little piece of connective tissue, but it doesn't carry blood anymore. Okay, sometimes there are disorders in which that vessel stays open, and when that happens, that's called a patent ductus arteriosus. But in most of us, that thing goes away and it becomes the ligamentum arteriosum. And what happens is that ligamentum arteriosum, that little piece of connective tissue between the aorta and the pulmonary artery, is actually a prime spot for the rupture of an aorta in an acceleration-deceleration process. And the reason why is it does produce an area of stability between those vessels. And so the spine is moving forward, and it kind of pushes the aorta forward along with that momentum, and it actually causes it to tear. So I misspoke, and I am correcting that now. And I hope you understand. If you don't, you can give me a message. Okay, so now with that out of the way, let's talk about why I stopped podcasting. Multiple things. Number one, about May 2022, I finally went on a vacation, and I had not been on a vacation since December 2019. So I was very happy to finally go on a vacation. And this is I can make it a much longer story, but it's a short story here. I'm on a train. I'm on a, kind of like a public transport type thing. And I am in this car with other people. And in fact, the people directly across from me is a young man. By young, I mean he's probably in his 30s with his wife, and they had a couple of kids. And all of a sudden, I noticed this man. He was looking at his phone, and he got really, really serious. Like his face kind of went ashen, and he touched his wife's arm, and he said something bad happened. And so, I'm not really trying to listen in because I'm not that kind of person, but they are 2 feet from me. So, what can I do? Well, anyway, she kind of says, well, what do you mean? A mass shooting? And he says, yes, it's a mass shooting at a school. And so, as it turned out, that was the day of the Uvalde massacre at Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, Texas, in which a gunman entered a school, and as you know, he killed multiple children and some school teachers, and it's really one of the worst tragedies in the history of this country. It caused a very traumatic response for me. And now I don't have any relation to any school shooting type thing. But when these things happen, I picture them happening. I picture myself like in my own elementary school when I was a child, and I went to a great elementary school, and I loved my teachers and classmates, and I just loved the school and loved the town, and so it's a very difficult thing for me to think about, because I empathize heavily, and then also because I know that the medical examining team and the death investigation team and everybody is going to be involved, the EMTs and everybody, and this will scar them forever. They will never recover. And it's just something that hit home for me because, I do see a lot of murders in my job as a forensic pathologist, and then to see that a number of children killed in school, it just was one of those things that it was just such a shocking moment. Well, how does that relate to my podcast? Because I had planned episodes for the next several episodes of my podcast was going to be gunshot wounds. And I was going to cover, range, trajectory, and type of weapon used. And of course, I was going to cover high-powered rifle injuries. Well, and I may have even recorded the podcast. Frankly, I don't remember. But the point I'm making is that I did not want to release episodes about gunshot wounds or high-power rifle injuries, things like that, the week that this terrible tragedy happened. It would seem ghoulish, if you ask me. And so I waited a week, I waited 2 weeks, I waited 3 weeks, I waited 4 weeks, and it just did not feel right to be making podcasts at that time about that topic. Now, could I have switched and talked about something else? Sure, I could have. But I just think I was too disturbed by that event to just, I don't know, I just wanted some time off from basically talking about violence. And as you know, violence and death, because as you know, as a forensic pathologist, that is a very large part of my job. Now, at the same time that's occurring, this is hit number 2, my TikTok account is pretty big. I'm getting, I hesitate to say TikTok famous, but, at that time I had several 100,000 followers. And most of what I wanted to say about medicine and pathology and forensics, I could say on my TikTok channel. And I can think of, record and edit and upload a video in under 5 minutes. Now, contrasting that with the podcast issue, with podcasts, it's actually kind of a pain. To be honest, the recording, and then, if I'm going to add sound effects or add music or things like that, I have to mix it down in a separate program, and then I have to convert the files, and then I have to upload it to my podcast host, and it's quite a process. So I think that the ease of TikTok and Instagram and things like that caused me to be a little more apathetic about continuing the podcast. Okay. So the third hit is that I had a change of equipment, and that seems trivial, but it's not trivial. If you listen to my podcasts from 2020, I personally think the sound quality is excellent. The editing is pretty good, and I just loved the computer and the mic that I had at that time. But for some reason, I had to change because that computer is very, very old. But for some reason, it was great for recording stuff. So I had a change of equipment. I had a computer change and some software and stuff. And frankly, it became more difficult to upload the podcasts. To be honest with you, I've recorded a number of episodes that I have not uploaded. Now, someday, if they release a greatest hits album of my stuff, then some of these unreleased tracks might appear on that. I've always been fascinated by that sort of thing. But we'll see. I'll probably cover some of those topics if I decide to continue this. And the fourth hit, so like I said, it's multifactorial. And the fourth hit is that at that time, 2021, 2022, 2023, podcast culture, or kind of these bro podcasts, have just exploded. And so what I mean is any person with a couple of $100 can buy a microphone, start a podcast, And honestly, the content for most of these is completely terrible. And it's usually the same format. It's two guys talking about something they have no idea about with one girl who's a pick-me girl. And for some reason, these things are super successful, but they're also, in my opinion, super idiotic most of the time. And so I kind of fell away from even wanting to be in the podcast culture. It sort of was irritating to see this happening to where you can make a podcast with good evidence, with, kind of academic approach, and it doesn't really do anything compared to a person who's talking about the earth being flat or space not being real or something like that. And then, they make millions of dollars doing this. So I had all of these things happen in a short amount of time, literally probably, 2 or 3 months. And it just kind of made me go, you know what? I don't think I need to podcast anymore. Now, multiple people have emailed me, sent me messages on TikTok, Instagram, sort of like really wanting me to bring the podcast back. And I've really wanted to, but also I was very busy with my actual day job. I mean, 2022 and 2023 were insanely busy for me. Toward the end of 2023, I started to work less, which is a good thing because I wanted to put more time into creative pursuits. And for those who know me, you know that I'm a very creative person. I love to paint. I love to draw. I love to write. I love to record music. You name it. And I enjoy doing it if it's a creative thing. And sometimes it's just I want to, go out and just go for a walk. I want to go walk to the river or something like that. So, I think that all of that together just kind of pushed me away from it. But now things have kind of changed a little bit, and I've had such a response to people just saying, please come back. I enjoy your podcast. I enjoy, listening to it on the way to work. I enjoy listening to it when I'm doing housework or when I'm walking or when I'm exercising. And so I can't guarantee any kind of frequency. Like I'm going to put one out every, 3 days. I mean, I'm not going to put one up every day like some of these podcasters do, unless it were to be a full-time job for me. And I certainly don't have enough subscribers or listeners to make that happen. I'm going to need a lot more than that. But speaking of that, I just want to remind people that, if you want to go to my Instagram, I did change it to the Dead Letter, which is my TikTok name. You can also search my name, Darren L. Wolfe, MD. You can probably search Forensic Pathologist and I'll come up. That account on Instagram used to be called Anatomy and the Dead a long time ago when I first started on Instagram. So basically I've got, the main stuff there is TikTok, which I'm not really on as much anymore, Instagram. But what I've started now, which I want you to be aware of, is something called Substack. Now, if you've not heard of Substack, it's essentially it's kind of a cross between a blog, a social media, and, like a Twitter type thing where you can update statuses and things like that. And what I have found is that at Substack, I can actually put up content that doesn't get blocked. One of the biggest problems I had with TikTok is I'll put a picture of a normal kidney up, and then they'll give me a guidelines violation. Now, likewise, over at Instagram, the same sort of thing. They have a lot of problems with their content moderation because I'll put something up to teach, and then they'll give me a violation. And this got so bad, I had to end my subscription page over there, which is unfortunate because I enjoyed having that little subscription page with some of my followers. But now it looks like Substack is going to be the place for that. And you can type in my name, Darren Wolfe, MD, Dr. Darren Wolfe, any of that, and I should come up. Probably if you type in forensic pathology, I'll come up. I may be the only one on there. But it's going to have, I've already made posts. There's a free side and there's a paid or subscription side. So I put up posts, I comment on news stories, I teach, I have questions, like medical questions, facts, and then the more hard-hitting stuff is behind a paywall. Basically, anything involving like obviously hardcore pathology stuff, forensic stuff, gruesome images, lots of blood and things like that. Kind of has to be behind a paywall because I'm trying to make sure that my account doesn't get any issues with it. But if you want to go there, that would be great. And you can either follow the free side or you can subscribe to my page, and I have to look it up. So Dr. Darren Wolfe Substack. If you type in Dr. Darren Wolfe, DARINWOLFE, that should come up. So that's about 15 minutes. I just wanted to touch base and see if there is still interest in the podcast. I mean, certainly I've had people email me and sort of send me angry messages, or they leave reviews where they're kind of mad that I quit without an explanation, which I think is funny. I think it's funny because I don't really owe people an explanation. I mean, they don't pay me to be on there. I've made $0 on that podcast, but maybe if I got 50,000 listeners or something, then maybe I could do it more than I have been. Certainly, there has to be an incentive there for me to go through all the trouble of recording and editing to get the stuff up. But this particular one, I just wanted to touch base with everybody, remind you of my social media stuff, and then remind you that my probably best content going forward is going to be on Substack. This podcast will probably still go up on Apple and Spotify, but apparently I can link it to Substack. And that's part of why I'm recording this, is I'm going to give it a try and have it, linked to Substack. And then that's going to be kind of the hub where anybody who really, really enjoys the work that I do can go there first and follow that and kind of get everything they need in terms of education or podcast or something like that. But yeah, that's it. I don't really have much else to say except that I probably should have updated, but the reason why I didn't feel extremely compelled to do so is almost everyone that listens to my podcast also follows at least one of my social medias, and I have made reference to this on the social medias. But I've got some topics. I've got some episodes recorded and topics that I'm interested in, and I may comment on cases in the news. I think the podcast is sometimes the best for that, commenting on cases in the news, and then we'll just go from there. And hopefully this will work out. Hopefully you're still listening, and thanks for, being patient after almost 2 years of an absence. And we'll see if we can do something fun here. Maybe I'll have some guests, or maybe it's just going to be me again. We'll see. Anyway, thanks for listening.